Hello, hello, hello. Jay Vix here. Welcome to another episode of Meet the Experts, which is the show that gives entrepreneurs, business owners, leaders, thought leaders, anybody who really has a message that wants to get their message about their products, their services, who they help, why they do what they do, their passion, their background, somebody who has something that they want to share. And we give these people a platform, a video platform to do it. So it's kind of like a podcast, but it's more like just a video recorded commercial for a business. But I have found that I've made more really cool connections with people around the world just from doing these. That it's been so rewarding. It's grown my network globally, right? Well, we've had several guests now from Canada, and yesterday I was talking with somebody who's going to be a guest coming up who's in Israel. But today's guest, Denise, when I bring her up, I'm positive she's our first guest from the UK. Denise is a celebrant. She does officiates weddings and other things. She's going to tell you all about that. But she lives in the UK and she's been doing this a long time. And I can't wait to learn more about her path from where she started to how did she get to become a celebrant. And so without further ado, I'm going to let her tell you more about it. So let's bring Denise up onto the screen right now. Denise, how are you today?
I'm fine, thank you. Bit wet because it's wet here.
Wet there. Now we were talking about where you were, and you said Litchfield, but then you said something about Shakespeare, but where Shakespeare was. So you want to tell us about that?
Yes, I've temporarily moved out of my home for about 30 years in Litchfield. Litchfield is the home of Dr. Johnson. Dr. Johnson wrote the English dictionary. Prior to that, I'm from Stoke-on-Trent, which is the home of the infamous captain. I forgot his name. The captain of the Titanic.
Oh, I got you.
I mentioned that. And now I'm in Stratford-upon-Avon until the end of October, which is the home of William Shakespeare. And then I'll be moving to Spain.
And Spain. So there's a jump. So we need to do this again when you move to Spain so that I can say I've also interviewed people from Spain. Very, very cool. Well, Denise, I'm excited that you're on. I love chatting with you during our sound check a few weeks ago. And I think now's the time to kind of tell the world a little bit more about who you are and what you do.
Okay. Well, for 40 years, I worked in the health and fitness industry. I was a Jane Fonda babe. I was one of those people in leg warmers and leotards and shaking my booty every 2-3 times a week. And I loved it so much, I decided I wanted to get involved in it. And at the time, there wasn't a fitness industry educational pathway. And I think I did one of the very first fitness qualifications. From that, I ran my own classes. Gym's very different then. And then from that, I went to manage a health club. That took me into more of an educational role with being an assessor, helping to develop various courses. And then I found a little niche there in exercise and older people and aging and exercise. And I absolutely loved that. And after a period of time, I left that particular position mainly because the government withdrew funding for that kind of course. So I found myself redundant and out of work. So I set up my own community classes. And because I thoroughly enjoyed working with older people, I set up community classes for the aging population and became quite successful at it. I still have people who've been coming to me for almost 20 years. They came when they retired, and I've actually got one lady, she's 89, which is just fabulous. And then I also worked in health clubs. And then during lockdown, obviously, because of the kind of work I did, we couldn't work. Yes, I did some classes online, and that was great fun, teaching people in their 70s how to use WhatsApp and how to use Zoom. That was hilarious. And that became a community in its own right. They supported each other through that. But at the time, life at home, my personal life was very, very challenging and very difficult. My late husband was an addict. And quite narcissistic and a very controlling individual. So it wasn't a happy time for me. He'd had a business, and because of his addiction, he'd lost his business. That happens. And then one day I was at the time I was doing a yoga qualification online. I wanted to update what I did because I always believed in ongoing education. I'm a great believer that education is for life. And I'd done my course and I was just scrolling through Facebook as you do. And this advert came up about training to be a celebrant, and I just passed it through. But then my husband came in a bit of a rage, saying that he wasn't happy that was always on my computer. Why do you need to learn X, Y, Z? There's no point in it. And I said, I do. He said, well, what am I going to do? I need some work. And I said, well, for goodness sake, why don't you train as a celebrant? And it only said it because it just appeared on my screen. And then he just walked off. Anyway, lo and behold, a few weeks later, he said, I've been thinking about what you've said, and I think I will train as a celebrant. Well, I could have passed out because he just never thought that you had to be qualified to do anything. You just thought if you could read a book and do it. Well, you wouldn't let a hairdresser cut your hair if they just read the book, would you? But he never understood that, which I always thought was quite amusing. And he said, but I will do. He said, but I'll do it on one condition. I said, what's that? He said, that you do it as well. And I just thought about it, and I thought, well, I actually want to say no because I'd worked in his business, I'd worked with him, and to work with somebody who has the all the things that come with being an addict is really hard work because there's no rationale. So, but then I also thought, well, if I say no and he goes down bank, everybody will blame me for not supporting him. So I just thought, well, I've got to say yes. I've got no choice. I was stuck between a rock and a hard place. So I said yes. I said, but on one condition. What's that? I said, you pay for it. I'm not paying for it. You pay for it. So he went, yeah, okay. And about a couple of weeks later, all the course notes came and he started it. I was still doing my yoga qualification because we were still restricted to being able to go into studios. And he did it and he passed. Well, he did 1 year and he passed. Then he did another one. And he passed that. And he was quite buoyed at the fact that he'd passed these units, never having done any training for many, many years. And then he said, well, why haven't you started yours? I said, well, I'm still doing this. I'll do it when I've finished. So I dragged it out because I didn't really want to do it. So I dragged it out. And eventually I thought, I've just got to do this. So I finished my yoga qualification and I just sat down one day. I thought, well, okay, read the unit. What do they want? And I've worked in education. And when you've worked in education, you know what people are looking for when they set you a module, when they set you a question. I did all the research for the first module, had conversations with my assessor, did the work, sent it off, and I passed with a distinction. Well, that was fun. I did better than my husband, so that wasn't good. And so I continued the course, but after each module, obviously you get feedback from your assessor, but I just got a little bit more than general feedback. I got sort of pointers in how I could implement all these things in practice. And we just basically started conversations, my assessor and I. And after each module, I just felt so much more buoyed by what I could actually achieve. And I suddenly realised after about the third module, I could actually be quite good at this. Anyway, I completed the course with a distinction, which didn't go down very well. And I just started to put a website together. And my husband basically fell off the back of a wagon. And after a week's period of really awful living, I had to have him arrested for domestic violence. He was taken away and there was a restraining order. And I never saw him again. I paid for him to go into rehab and he went, and his family then looked after him. And sadly, he passed away. But I then thought, well, I now have to work hard at what I'm doing, because when I went back to being an instructor in health clubs, that work was removed from me because clubs hadn't had income. So what they did was they put their work in-house. They weren't taking on freelance instructors. So everything went in-house. So I lost 2/3 of my income almost overnight, which is why I just threw my heart and soul into my Celebrant work. And I was just getting off of that. My Celebrant bus was just going up the hill. And I say he died, and he died in quite tragic circumstances, my husband did. And the blame lay at my door. And that's another story. But I thought, no, take 2 months out, get your act together, sort yourself out, sort your head out, get support, get therapy, and just throw yourself into this, not your fitness business, because that has a relationship with your past life, just something completely new. So I did, and I absolutely loved it. And very quickly I got some customers. I knew nothing about SEOs and websites. I mean, it was all completely new to me. So I networked with various network groups, our local chamber of trade. There was various late women only network groups that met in evenings, some met during the day. And I just literally threw myself out there. I could get out of the house, which was lovely, because you live on your own, you've been through something difficult, you really do want to get out and meet new people. And I didn't know where to find a web designer from. I knew nothing about, I knew blogs existed, but I didn't know there was a process for writing a blog. So I met a copywriter who ran blog workshops, and it just literally grew and grew. And I was just so thrilled that I actually did that, because it just gave me a whole new lease of life, brought a whole new circle of friends to me, massive motivation, and I just absolutely love it.
It sounds like it. Yeah. It's an amazing story, and obviously really glad that you kind of came out of some dark periods of time to get to where you're at now. So being a celebrant, so I know here with a lot of things, you can be either a minister or just an ordained or an officiant. I mean, there's so many names and terms for it, but can you talk a little bit about some of your services that you do as a celebrant, and who you're the people that you work with most?
Yeah. I'm mainly a wedding celebrant. That's what I really enjoy doing. I'm a funeral celebrant, and if I'm pushed into a corner, I will do a naming ceremony for a newborn child.
Naming ceremony?
Yeah, like a christening.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. A wedding celebrant, when a wedding celebrant conducts a wedding, it's not actually a legal wedding. The wedding has to be registered at our registry office. And that sometimes can be quite confusing for people. I have actually written a blog about registrar versus celebrant, and it's on my website. And I know it gets quite a few views, because it is always a point of contention with some people. But the way I get over that, the way I overcome that particular problem, is I just say that when somebody has passed away, you have to register the death. Do you have the funeral at that point? No. When a child is born, the birth has to be registered. When you register the birth, do you have to have your christening ceremony or your party and all that at the same time? No, we don't. We do that afterwards. It's exactly the same with the celebrant-led wedding. Go and register your wedding, treat it as an administration process like some other countries do, and then let's put your wedding together. And the way I do that is through a questionnaire. I have a wedding questionnaire, which is in 5 sections. It's great because it says, like, tell me about your love. I want to know about their romantic story, what brought them together, and what do they think about each other, which is their story so far. What makes each other laugh, what winds the other person up, what could they change if they had to. Do they remember where they first met? That's quite funny, because sometimes you get we met in a cafe, we met at the library. Who's right? But that can be fun. I also like to know about their family. Who's their family? And sometimes their family isn't necessarily blood relatives. It can be somebody who's perhaps taken the place of a parent, or could take the place of a grandparent or an uncle, but they've been with the family for a long period of time and they mean a lot to them. There's another one that's about their dream ceremony. Obviously, there's a lot of finance involved in a wedding, and some people cannot afford their dream ceremony. And a good example of that, I did a wedding for a couple, and in their dream ceremony questionnaire, the guy wrote, I would love to arrive at my wedding venue in a Ferrari, but I can't afford. So, well, okay, let's think outside the box. What can we do? So we got a remote control Ferrari, because it was an external wedding. And I said, why don't we use that remote control Ferrari to bring in the wedding rings? Whoa, yeah, that's great. Let's do that. And that's awesome. Did. And his friends knew that he loved Ferraris. And it came down the centre, the where all the guests were sitting to sort of the podium where the wedding was taking place with these rings on, and it got a huge laugh, got a great round of applause, and people just loved it. And it's just something different. And so he did get his dream ceremony, but in a slightly different way. So that's what dream ceremony is about. And then I also want to know about their venue. What does their venue mean to them? And their vows. What kind of vows do they want? Some people want amusing vows. Some people want faith-based vows. Some people don't want to say their vows. Some people want to say their promises. So that's really, really important. And being a celebrant, that allows you to do that. So your service is very unique for you. Unlike a registrar led wedding or a faith-based wedding, it'll be exactly the same as the next people coming through. There's nothing personal about it. It's yours. It's unique. And when I've finished the service, I have a little package I put together. I wish I had. I've just moved house, so I haven't got one here. But I get a memory box, and I put in the memory box something that they've brought up in their wedding questionnaire. An example of that is I did a wedding for somebody, and he said he'd give her his last Rolo. It used to be an advert on our TV. I love you so much, I'll give you my last Rolo. So I put a little packet of Rolos in. I did one the other day. She made a comment about he'd swap her for a bag of Percy pigs. Well, it's something that Marks and Spencer's sell. So I put a packet of Percy pigs in. Just little things, because it demonstrates that I've cared and I've taken notice of what they've put the time and effort into writing. And then their wedding script and their wedding notes get put together in a file, all bound up, tied up with a nice little ribbon, and I leave them that. And I ask, if they're staying at the venue, I ask the venue to put it in their room. If they're not, I've found out where they're going to be, so I leave it for them. And that is the benefit of using a celebrant. You get all of that and more than you would using a registrar.
That's just such a more fun ceremony, right, than a lot of the traditional ones. I just recently interviewed, and it'll be probably by the time this one is live, that one will have already been on, but it was with a grief expert. And she was talking about when you're going through grief, like everybody has these nice things to say or these platitudes, right? And she teaches people, like, think of, when somebody passes and you don't know what to say, think of what Aunt Mildred would say, and don't say that. Say anything but that. Like, come with something from your heart. And it sounds like you put a lot of your heart and your passion and thoughtfulness into it to make it such a more fun experience. I can tell you, I've gone to tons of weddings that it was like, you just insert the different people, but it's the same ceremony over and over again. That sounds amazing. Like what you're describing.
And even when I'm actually delivering the wedding, I did a wedding 2 weeks ago, and as the bride walked through the guests, he started crying. So the first thing I said when she came to meet him at the front, I said, "Oh, you made him cry." It's the first time I've done that. But then that allows you, the whole congregation, if you want to call it congregation, they all relax. They go, "Oh, this is going to be fun. This is going to be different. It's not stuffy. It's not a set." It just allows it to be that little bit more personal. Because the other thing I try and do, I always arrive very, very early for a wedding because I want to meet all the guests when they come in. That gives me an opportunity to get a feel for what the place is like, who the people are, what kind of atmosphere it's going to be. Can I actually add a bit of humour? There might be humour in the script, but when it actually comes to it, are the family as humorous as they are perceived to be?
Sure.
So that's just so important to me.
That's awesome. So you've done a lot of ceremonies now. I'm sure, and especially with the personal touches like the Rolos and the other stuff that you've done, I'm sure that creates that lasting, memorable experience for them and a very personalized touch to it. I'm sure you've had to have something that somebody has told you, some type of testimonial or a win that you got that, like, it keeps you going. In golf, they say, "Oh, I hit the shot that keeps me coming back. I hit one good shot today, and that's the one that's going to make me play again." Anybody ever said anything to you from your ceremonies or any testimonials that you just constantly you're reminded of?
Yes, I had. Again, it's the wedding I did the other day. I've got it here. They put a testimonial on Hitched, and I just thought, yeah, that if I had to write it about me, that's probably as me. She said, where even to start? The most wonderful celebrant. She's thoughtful, she's kind, she's generous, and without doubt, her attention to detail is phenomenal, because to me, it's the detail.
Right.
Denise absolutely made our ceremony with her beautiful script, and prior to our ceremony, she visited us both to make sure we were okay and introduced herself. That's why I get there early. I go and talk to the bride, I go and talk to the groom, try and help them to chill out and relax. She was calming and kind. Denise, we adore you. Thank you so much for the ceremony of our dreams. That's everything to me. And that's what, every time I do a wedding, that's what I want to get. Because it's a special moment. It's it's important. And I suppose in an amusing one that I had, I do try and ask people why they chose me. And one of my very first weddings, I said, why have you chosen me and not all those other people? Because there's a lot of us out there. What made me stand out? He said, you weren't wearing a big flowery frock. You're going to be on my wedding photographs forever. You weren't wearing a big flowery frock. And I thought, well, actually, it's a good point.
Yeah.
Present yourself well. Your presentation is just as important. Your physical presentation is just as important as the presentation of your wedding pack. So, I always make sure that, I'm booted and suited in an appropriate manner. I look what their wedding theme is when I look at their venue and vows, and I try and sort of mute myself down to be like that. So
I love that.
Another important thing to remember. No,
the amount of work that you put into it, the attention to detail, I mean, makes you special, makes you unique, and will make you stand out. And that's also good, because it could also make you more money. But I mean, but it's also you're exactly what you said. I mean, this is, you want to be remembered as being, as the one that brought this like amazing ceremony together, so that's really, really cool. We kind of talked about learned it, earned it, improved your authority, which is a great story of how you kind of did it to appease your now late husband and took the course. But you also mentioned in there, and this is, I'm going to kind of tweak the question a little bit, that you're a lifelong learner. Have you done has there been any other certifications or titles since becoming a celebrant that you've added on to that, or is there just nothing like that? Or
only that I did I did a course on how to gain more information from my clients, which pointed me in the direction of putting together a wedding questionnaire. I'm a member of the Association of Independent Celebrants, and they run CPD sessions every month, which I try and get to. I use a wedding mentor, a lady called Kelly Mortimer, from the Next Level, and she regularly runs training sessions on how to improve your marketing, because I have to market myself. That's the thing. Sure, you're aware, and other people are, when it's your business, you're not just doing your skill. It's all the other things around it you've got to learn about, like the blogging, like your SEOs, like your marketing and all of that. So I had to, whilst I got a knowledge of it, I really needed to be sharp. And so I've gone on and improved my business skills. And along the way, I've done CPD sessions to improve my celebrant skills too. I do try and do it regularly. Very cool.
Very, very cool. All right, I'm going to change gears real quick. We're coming to the end. I've just got a couple of more questions for you. But Denise, just tell us something that you're thankful for.
I'm thankful for my mum. My mum was a single parent in the 60s, at a time where women weren't given mortgages, where women didn't have equal pay. And she went to her solicitor to finalise her divorce from my father. And she said, look, I need a mortgage. And the solicitor said, well, I'll help you. And they went through the yellow pages, which, for those who don't know what a yellow pages is, because we don't use directors anymore, it's literally a directory of everything going on in your area in terms of business. And she went through all the building societies and started at A. And we had a building society called the Abbey National. And she rang everyone trying to get my mum a mortgage. And the only one that would give my mum a mortgage was the Woolwich. So she went all the way through those. She got to W. So mum got a mortgage with the Woolwich. And she got the mortgage with the Woolwich because the Woolwich had just been given a new managing director who happened to be female, and she believed that women also had an equal right to have a mortgage. And my mum brought us up to be independent, not to take any flack, to stand up for ourselves, and also to be respectful, and never take things for granted. And I've always been like, I don't take anything for granted. If I had to use a phrase to describe her, it would be Harper Valley PTA. Because that's what she was like. She'd be down that school. Don't you talk to my daughter like that. She has to wear those shoes because we can't afford any more. And my sister and I are exactly the same. And I am very, very grateful for my upbringing from my mum.
It sounds like she was an awesome woman. All right, last question. Let's try to do one just so we get everything in on time. What is your what do you hear over and over again as far as a question? I mean, there's got to be something that everybody asks, or at least most people ask. What is that most common question you get asked? And I'll give you a chance on a video platform to answer it.
The one I said earlier, the most asked question is, what is the difference between a registrar and a celebrant? And it is an important point. And one of the things that we are encouraged to do as a celebrant is to make sure that we have evidence that the people are married legally. We have to understand the legal implications of a marriage, but to make sure we put it across in a positive way, not to discredit a registrar. Some people want that. That's fine. We have choice, and that's another word I use when people ask what is the difference. It is, at the end of the day, it is about choice. And what what do you want out of your wedding, but which is why I put a blog on my website about it, just to make it clear. There is another question that is asked quite frequently. People want to honour people from their family or their friends who've passed away at their wedding, and they want to know how to do it respectfully. And there's lots of things that you can do. And one of the things I try and encourage, if it's a sort of faith type based wedding, maybe incorporate a poem or a phrase out of a book or a line or two out of a film that person perhaps liked, or they may have had a prayer that they liked, or they may have had a hymn that they liked. You can use it in your wedding. If it's more humorous, did the person have a favourite drink? Well, let's layer them a place setting and put their favourite tipple on the table, and let's have a toast to them. So there's a variety of things, but it does come up quite frequently.
Interesting. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, it seems like every wedding I've ever been to, there's been, in memory of somebody that, like, your grandparents or something that people have lost their parents. Well, very cool. Well, this was fun. I hope you would agree. I had a great time talking to you, learning more about what you do. I wish you continued success in your Celebrant business. It sounds like you should be the choice for anybody within hundreds of miles of you to do it, or thousands of miles, maybe to fly you to that destination wedding that we talk about. So your website, if somebody wants to reach you, is denisewhelancelebrant.com, correct? Which I have scrolling at the bottom. Denise, thank you so much for being a guest today. It's been a real joy and pleasure to have you on.
Thank you, Jay.
No Excuse me. You're okay.
Not for so long. No,
totally.
Well, thanks very much. It's been a pleasure. It's always fun with talking to you.
Thank you so much. All right. That was awesome. I just love doing these episodes. I love talking to people. And I love the fact that we're becoming more global in what we do. I told you at the beginning, if you'd like to be a guest on Meet the Experts, all you need to do, it's right there at the bottom of the ticker, visit www.meettheexpertspodcast.com, www.meettheexpertspodcast.com. It costs you nothing to be a guest. We'll give you a great interview. We hope it's a great interview. And then we give you the video afterwards. It doesn't cost anything. We give you the video. If you want us to do some video production afterwards or do any promotion of it, we can talk about that as well. But we would just love to have you. So if you're interested, head over to the website, read all about it, learn what's included. And until our next episode, I hope you have a wonderful day and wonderful week ahead, and enjoy your time with your friends and family.